one thing I realize is as a product manager, you have to be ready to question
Yeah.
without any hesitation. And you should also be ready to say, I don't know, teach me. So those two are like super important and those two have been really helpful for me to be sort of like vulnerable in a way, but also understanding and making sure that if I understand this, then I can drive us forward.
Hello everyone, welcome to Product Unfiltered. Joining us today, we have Taruna Vardha, Technical Product Manager at Trepp. Today, Taruna will talk about her experience building products at Trepp and various other companies. Taruna, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure. Thanks, Utkarsh. Thanks, Rahul, for having me here. So I am Taruna. I have a graduation degree from computer science. I started off in Bangalore, and I work for various industries, various technologies, various industries in my past 12, 13 years of experience. I started off as an automation engineer, QA engineer in McAfee and Amazon back in Bangalore. And once, while I was there, I was majorly like coding and being on the QA side of things. Post that, I moved to New York City, where I was working for a small startup. And that's where I was exposed to product management as such, where I was working as a quality assurance engineer and automation engineer, but I was closely working with the product manager there. And it had such a high impact on me that while I was onboarding onto a QA role, I actually sat with the consumers, sat with the call center guys to understand what our consumers look like and how is our product actually benefiting the consumers. And that's where I was like, wow, this is so great that our product is impacting users just by utilizing technology. And at that position, at that time, I decided that yes, I want to be into technical product management. I did not want to leave away my technology background, but at the same time, the impact that technology was creating for end users was something that really left a very good impact on me. And I wanted to be in that space between like business and technology. And I decided like, okay, I need to go forward into TPM. And at that point of time, I was looking at different avenues on how do I go into this transition phase from QA to TPM. And I was looking at two avenues, either attending like a product certification sort of a thing and getting ideas on how to really build product, or the other alternative was to go for a master's program. I was debating between two, and then I did talk to a lot of my seniors and my colleagues, and I realized that a master's program might give me a full a 360-degree view of how product are created, what goes behind the product. And in addition to masters, it's also the fact that you are building a crew around you who are in the similar space, whom you can exchange ideas with. So that was the added advantage of masters, and I decided to do my masters from CMU. And from there, I've worked across different industries. I worked in insurance, I worked in healthcare tech, worked currently I'm working for Trepp, which is on the financial sector. And at Trepp, this is my first experience at financial sector as such. But over the past, what I've realized moving across different industries is that product management, it's design, technology, and business. And the idea there is if you're good at one thing, you can always learn the other two and move into a different industry. So that's the core of it. If you're confident about your technology and if you are able to get into a company which is solving a similar technical space or a technical problem, then you have a leverage over the other candidates in that space. You can always learn about the business. You can always learn about the UI quotient of it if it is there. And at the end of the day, it's also about a product manager could be like variety of it could have a very different variety of mix based on the problem space that is being solved. So I diverged into product management as such, but that's my journey into product management.
Taruna, that's really great to know that coming from a software engineering background, then into a QA background, then entering into product space. But we would also love to know what was your background or experience that helped you land a job at Trepp as a technical product manager.
Yes. So with Trepp, as I was talking about, the product management is a combination between business, technology, and design. And with Trepp, I felt that my technical experience in the past, building microservices and building different types of products which are on the technical aspects, that really helped me into getting into Trepp, because I do not come from a financial background. And at the same time, making sure that you are able to create an impact in the space that you are, that is very impressive for any company. At the end of the day, it's a win-win situation, right? Like, what do you bring to the table, and what does company need from you? And for me, my position was I was able to bring my technical expertise and my ability to do, saying I can get things done, and that really helped me put forward and made me push forward into my role at Trepp. And I believe that in any role that you are, if you're able to project on what is the impact that you're able to make to the company and to the problem space, I think that definitely has a long way in terms of transitioning into a different role.
Yeah. And Taruna, we also wanted to know more about your interview experience at Trip, because getting into product management itself a challenge. So how was your experience transitioning from QA to product management, and how was your complete interview experience?
So I started off as a product owner. My first role from QA into product management was as a product owner. And a product owner is like a subset of product manager responsibilities. It's not, a product manager definitely has much bigger responsibilities. A product owner is sort of like an associate PM. But again, every company has a very different way of putting titles to the responsibilities. But if there's a product owner role, it's almost like you're assisting the product manager in getting things done. And I started off as product owner. It was a database company, and the experience that I got there was immense. And how did that happen was I was able to project my strong points, which was the technology and the user aspect of things, and also project that I am able to make an impact. And the third and the most important thing was your ability to be coachable, because you're starting off as somebody, as a fresher in product management. And usually on the other side, when I've been on the other side of the interview panel, I've realized that if you're coachable and if you're ready to learn and you're curious, then most likely you're going to be hired. And if you're able to pitch that, yes, I can get things done, then yeah, people are ready to take a chance on you and then get it. And the same thing happened to me as well. Somebody on the other side was ready to take a chance with me, and they gave me an opportunity, and the rest of the things happened.
So Taruna, since we are talking about the interview experience, and now since you're sitting on the other side of the picture, so if you have to hire someone for a TPM role, what skill sets do you look for? Or if you have to hire people for the PM role, what skills do you look for? How do both of them differs?
Yeah. So with a technical product manager, I would definitely look for either hands-on coding experience, or I would also look for their ability to understand technology. Because as a TPM, you will be working day in and day out with development team, and it's very crucial for you to understand what's happening on the engineering side and have your own perspective of things, right? Because at the end of the day, it's decision about, is it affecting the scope? Is it affecting the quality? Is it affecting the time and the budget to actually get things done? So if you have your own perspective, then it's easier to make better decisions. And how do you get your own perspective? Is that if you have had your own experience coding, building, trying to solve a similar space, then you have your own perspective, and then you can always pitch in your ideas to get things out. So as a technical product manager, I would definitely think that coding experience required, just high level information about how do you access SQL databases, your concepts of SQL, and then APIs. I think every company uses APIs. So your concepts of APIs, authorization, authentication. And these are very high level. It's not necessary that you actually have coded in these things. But if you have a technical bent of mind to understand these and sort of cross question and be curious about them, then I would think that you're good enough. And again, other aspect there was analytics. If you're driving a website, you want to understand how your users are utilizing the website. So looking at the data and trying to analyze and create new users and new functionality just based on how the analytics run, like that is also requires you to have like a technical component to it, like do queries and all of that. So as a technical product manager, I definitely look at this. And of course, there's the other aspect of curiosity and coachability. For a product manager, it's really about how you can talk with business, how you can, what's your exposure in like design and business and technology. And again, every product manager role is very different from each other, and every company has a very different vibe for product management. I would really suggest everyone to really utilize that interview time to understand what you're getting into. At the end of the day, it's an interview, it's an exchange of views, right? So you want to understand what you're getting into, what level of project management is required in that product management, what level of technology, is it more design oriented PM job? So that sort of, it's a combination. It's like a Venn diagram of all these, right? So you want to understand at what intersection are you really getting into. So as a product manager, again, it depends on the kind of requirements. I would look at multiple of these skills to understand if they really fit into. But the coachability and curiosity applies even for the product manager role for beginners to be hired.
Yeah. And I think, Taruna, these are really great insights to understand the difference between what a product manager does versus a technical product manager. And we are also curious to understand about a typical day in a life of a technical product manager. How does it look like? What are your roles and responsibilities? What kind of stakeholders do you talk to? Can you please share some insights regarding that as well?
Yeah, so it's funny. It's actually been so varied across the different companies that I've worked across. But if I had to generalize it, how it starts off is there are requirements which are led by the business product managers, where the business product managers are. So again, this is my experience. Every technical product manager could have a very different experience. My experience has been that in all the companies that I've worked, there have been like a business product manager who would work closely with the consumers, to different stakeholders, understand the requirements. And some part of those discussions where it gets technical, the TPMs are also involved to get their viewpoints, to give what is really required, and sort of like exchange of ideas there. So in some companies I've been involved in those discussions with users and with consumers and stakeholders. And then there's a concept of, okay, if we know that this is the scope of the requirement, how do we actually build this out? Looking at the technical aspect of it. So then there's this requirement gathering session with the engineering team. Like I go with my engineering team and talk to them saying, hey, this is what we're trying to build. What are your thoughts? How do we go through it? And then I get like a first level view. We have like an architectural review with either an architect or an in-house tech lead who talks about like, how do we like break this down further? And once we have an architectural view, every requirement is broken down into user stories and define acceptance criteria. They're like broken into like epics and user stories, and each developer has a viewpoint on like what's the estimate for it. So all of that is like aggregated together, and then we figure out that this product actually, or this feature, takes about like so much of effort, and this is what is going out in production. And because this is like very technical, it's important that as a TPM, you gain trust of your engineers, because at the end of the day, you're working with them in and out, and your viewpoints are very important there, and their viewpoints are definitely important for you to drive things forward. So usually it's like the architectural review, then the actual work. There is definitely project management also involved in product management, where you're trying to like break this down, and then you're trying to like create PRDs, where you look at a specific requirement, do a lot of documentation. Documentation also is like a very big thing for product management, because there are multiple stakeholders, and because you want to get everyone in one place, a document really is like a beginning place where you're like, hey, this is what we need to do. Are you guys good with it? And that's where like viewpoints and discussions happen.
And in fact, Taruna, a follow-up to this answer, you mentioned that a role of TPM involves, or even a product manager involves working with engineering team extensively. My question to you is, or what are some tips which you employ while working with the engineering team to gain trust within that engineering team? Because as a product manager, you have to lead without authority. So what are some insights which you can share with the users?
Yep. So what there is, if you're looking at just the engineering team as such, first is trying to, what I generally do is first is trying to understand what is the problem that they're solving, what does their regular work look like, what kind of tools and languages do they use, and then also look at some of the general issues that the team is facing as a TPM, from the engineering perspective. Then next level, what I do is sometimes I just sit with one of my developers. I set up one-on-one time with one of the developers that I'm probably more comfortable with. I set up time with them and be like, hey, I'm interested to learn this. Can you tell me how to use this tool or technology if I'm not aware of it? So background, or before this, I also try to like go on YouTube and say, hey, what is this about? Like if there's a new technology that I'm not aware of, it's not very difficult to understand new technologies if you have a base where, if your concepts are strong, it's easier to understand newer technologies. So really trying to Google, trying to get from YouTube, what does this mean? What does technology mean? And then working with my developers one-on-one and seeing if I can get more insights from that. That has helped me a lot. And sometimes what I've done is trying to do things myself. Like initially when I was in college, I learned like Java, but then when I started off work, they were doing things in Python. So I just went on Google and was like, okay, what are the constructs? How do you code in Python? What are the things that you need to be aware of? So really doing some of your side work on the side, gives you a better leverage to understand their language. At the end of the day, product manager is like a translator, I would say.
Yeah.
Like trying to translate like business needs, your internal translation is working, and then you convert it into engineering language. We're like, okay, yeah, I want a algorithm, I want like a construct, I want like a constructor, whatever, like whatever that is. So it's like an internal translator that needs to be working. And if you want to make your internal translator better, then utilizing all the resources that are available. And people are definitely helpful, more approachable. And one thing I realize is, as a product manager, you have to be ready to question without any hesitation. And you should also be ready to say, I don't know, teach me. So those two are like super important, and those two have been really helpful for me to be sort of like vulnerable in a way, but also understanding and making sure that if I understand this, then I can drive this forward. So it's okay to say I don't understand, but make sure that you understand so that you get your own perspective and push things.
So Taruna, I would like to understand, since technology is changing so rapidly these days, how difficult it is as a TPM to manage in this ecosystem of rapidly changing technology, because I'm sure the business requirements also evolves with the change in technology. So how do you make sure that you keep up with those changes?
Yeah, so really the answer here is, if you're curious and if you're able to make sure that you want to take some time off to understand what those new technologies are and how they can be implemented to solve your business problem, I think you're good. As a TPM, it's not required for you to develop things, to code things, but you should be able to understand and have a viewpoint. And for that to happen, to get that high level understanding, there are multiple resources outside. Let's say for AWS, like serverless, Lambda, that's been happening at Trepp right now. And I did not come from a background where I know that, but it's really a click away on YouTube to understand what is serverless, what is AWS, what does it provide. So it's really up to you to understand, like, where am I and at what level do I really want to go to. Resources are available umpteen places. So
thank you so much, Taruna, for sharing all these wonderful insights. We would like to move on to the next segment of our podcast, that is product paradox. So our first question to you is it more important for a technical product manager to prioritize product functionality or scalability?
That's a good question. So it is completely dependent on the product you're working on, and it is dependent on the stage of the product. So let's say it is the product is at a very nascent stage and there are consumers waiting for this. You have a differentiator. Then I would definitely say that scalability should not be Scalability, yes, at a certain level, but then the functionality would be more important at that point of time, saying, are you able to provide immediate impact to your users? But let's say you're building a big platform and you know that this is going to be the next thing for your company. You need to consider how scalable is your system, and through that, how are you able to provide functionality? So that there needs to be a decision point where you need to understand, is scalability more important or user functionality more important, and that is completely dependent on that scenario and that situation of where that product is in the product life cycle.
Mm-hmm. Our next question to you, Taruna, is should technical product managers prioritize the need of the engineering team or the need of the end users?
Yeah, so this is always a challenge for TPMs to manage. There is a lot of on the engineering side, there could be a lot of like tech debt that is essential to be resolved before functionality can actually be created. So that way, we are making sure that the technology side of the product is good and is able to support future requests. But at the same time, there's the user aspect of it. There's sales that is always looking forward for new features, and there is marketing that's looking forward for new features that can be pitched to clients. So it's a fine balance. Usually what we do in most of the companies that I work for is that there is a specific time allocated for engineering specific initiatives. Usually if we look at 100% of engineering capacity, we try to like allocate capacity specifically for engineering related initiatives, like about like 40% or 30%, depending on what is the requirement. And that way we're trying to balance it out. We're still giving priority to product needs and user needs, but at the same time, we know that it's essential for the technical aspect of things to be taken care of, so that we can scale better.
Yeah. And the next question, Tarun, is also a tricky one. Should technical product managers be held responsible for product failures, even if the fault lies with the engineering team?
So TPMs is a product manager is a role where you are working with multiple people to get things out. At the end of the day, it's like one person who's responsible for that product feature to go out. So usually I've seen that if something fails, then usually the TPM is blamed for it. But at the end of the day, it's a group thing, right? Like you are working with your engineers, you're providing insights to them, they are providing insights to you so that things go forward. So I wouldn't say a TPM will be blamed or has to be blamed. At the end of the day, if it's like a learning session for both engineering team and the TPM, we're good to go. If we're able to learn from those mistakes and move forward, I think any company is, and there is good retrospective based on the fact that, wait, was there a scope increase? Was there a budget decrease? What really happened? And seeing that this is not done again, that is the best thing about a failure of a particular feature or a product, where it's not about blame game. I think it's more about what can we learn from it.
So our next question for you, Taruna, is should technical product managers be involved in the hiring and firing decisions of the engineering team members?
So a TPM, because he or she is closely involved with the engineering team, it becomes evident on who is being able to contribute, who is not able to contribute. And if you're working for a startup, it becomes evident even across. So, and because TPMs and engineering managers are always in sync, trying to understand, hey, I have this project, I have 4 engineers from your team who are helping me out. But if the engineers are not able to contribute as much as required, then we are not really able to deliver that project feature on time. So there's always a sync between TPM and engineering manager. And I would say the decision is solely on the engineering manager, but there's a component of decision based on TPM's interaction with engineering team, engineering developers, and see how they're doing, and also contributing to the decision, saying, are they helping? Are they contributing? If they're not, then it always goes into that feedback loop with the engineering manager. So we have an indirect component, but not a direct one.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much, Taruna, for sharing such great insights with all of us. This brings us to the end of today's podcast. Hope all of you enjoyed today's episode and our discussion has helped learn something new. Stay tuned for more such exciting episodes. Thank you so much for tuning into Product Unfiltered.